Hello and welcome along to the VMTV Rugby Pod. Great to have Emer Considine and Fiona Hayes with me today. Girls, how are we all getting on?
Good, Stu.
Fiona, I just want to start, I suppose, where it was a break week, but we had the first two games, obviously 2 defeats for Ireland. But as a whole, what have you made of the Six Nations so far?
I suppose the Six Nations so far as a whole, I suppose we've really seen the gap between the front two and the rest. And from an Irish perspective, there's starting to be a massive gap as well. Wales have kicked on a little bit. We've seen Italy kicked on a bit. So we're starting to see here that everyone is slightly ahead of her. Of where Ireland would like to be at, Stu. And I suppose what I've really noticed with the likes of England is France as well, and Emer might agree with me, is that they've gotten better and better, and that the rugby, the big top games, like I can't wait to watch England-France on the last day of the season. I think that the standard has gotten huge and everyone's kicking on, and it's up to Ireland now to catch up with the rest, and Scotland as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
Emer, do you agree there with Fiona and just the gap? I know Wales have had a couple of wins, but where do you think that gap is, and is it increasing?
Yeah, I think England and France have reinvented themselves as well, especially after that loss in the World Cup. I think England will look to say, what did we do wrong? What were we missing? And they are, even under the same management, under Stuart, who is going to be leaving, or Simon Middleton is going to be leaving. He's still looking to change the way that England are playing, and it's not just a forward dominant game. I think looking back to the World Cup, it was the backs of New Zealand were just out of this world, and they dominated the English backline. And I think we've seen the English backline change it up, and they're using the backline more. We're seeing they were phenomenal the last day, and they just, they scored through them, they scored around them, they scored through a kick over the top, a chip over the top. It was just so many different ways that England just dominated through teams, and especially the last day. And France, even though a lot of the names aren't household names at the moment, they've a lot of the girls away with the sevens, focus on the Olympics. There was no difference in the standard, and there's some phenomenal players coming through. So I think they're pushing on to the next level. And even like that, Scotland were really good against England in the first game. I know the scoreline didn't show it, but they did really good plays, and they good physical carries, good defence. And the same obviously with Italy against France, and Wales, with the hammering that they gave Ireland in the first game. So, like Fiona said, it's just the top two are pushing further. The next three have kind of pushed on, and I don't feel like we have the depth and I suppose the time together to match the rest of those nations.
Fiona, just picking up what Emer said there, the depth there, it's so important. But have you seen any signs from Ireland that they are getting better, or is it just, are they going backwards?
No, I don't think they're going backwards. I think the coaching staff probably haven't had a lot of time to put their stamp on the style. I'm not seeing any clear style in how we defend. I'm not really seeing any clear style, I suppose, in how Ireland attack. But I think that's more with the chops and changes they've been forced to make. We knew, I suppose, at the start that the sevens mightn't come in. Now, I think there might be talk that they might be able to come in for the last couple of games. I'm not too sure, but they've seemed to reverse their saying that they definitely wouldn't be playing. It seems to be now that it's not off the cards. So look, I suppose the player pool became smaller then. We saw Ireland go over and compete in over in the combined provinces as over in that cup, the Celtic Cup. I personally don't think that stood much to them, and I'll tell you why. A lot of people mightn't understand that the likes of Wales would have been in it, and Scotland. But all the Scottish and Welsh players that would start in general were playing in the Premiership in England and were not released for this tournament. So Ireland were essentially playing teams with absolutely no one that would, maybe a couple of people might have kicked on and made the squad at the end, but they weren't playing against competitive English and against Scottish and Welsh teams. So I think that was huge, that maybe a couple of games, look, it's been ironed out. They'll have to fix that. Maybe a couple of friendly games might have stood better to them against teams that they would potentially be playing in this Six Nations. But they've had to use what they've had as a squad, and I haven't seen much of it, but I will say one thing, from the first game to the second game, certain areas they definitely improved that they needed to fix. So that's a sign of a good squad as well. We talked about maul defense at times and scrum going into France. The French scrum was huge. Ireland were able to counteract that at times until maybe the last 15-20 minutes when tiredness kicked in. As pundits, as fans, what we need to start seeing, and especially in this Italy game now, is attack. We haven't seen anything from the Ireland attack. We saw Dana come in and we saw a couple of nice kicks. So if they can vary it going into the next few games, if they have possession against England, it'd be nice to see them do something. They look like they were kind of, when pressure was coming on at times, that they didn't know where to go. And I'd like to see more structure around that.
I think
with the Dan O'Brien thing and the green shoots and how good she has been, what are you expecting from her against Italy? Will it be kicks in behind, or will they look to play it out the back to Aoife Dalton? What do you think they'll go on Saturday against Parma?
Yeah, Italy, their backline are kind of one of the backlines that have been together for the last while. You know, they're really consistent with their players and they know each other inside out, and they're a really good backline, and they've played a lot of rugby together. So they're not going to be easy to get through. They are tough to get through. There does tend to be a bit of space in the backfield, and I think we'll have to look at that, and Dana will probably look at that and their position around that, because they've had a few chops and changes with their wingers. I suppose that's to be the only position. They're strong in the midfield. We always talk about Rigoni and Solari up there. I'm not sure if she's injured, Solari, at the moment, but they are a strong midfield. Their 9-10 combination have been there together for a long time. So the spaces will be around the edges, but if they can get to the wings, I think we saw in some of the games that they, towards the end, we saw snippets of how good they can get if they look to move that ball to the wings, to the space, and just be patient. But it was last passes, it was last passes that let them down. It was kind of, we spoke about it before last week, about there was no deception in the runners. It just allowed the defence to slide off, because the hard line was never there with their hands up, or the front door option was never a genuine option. So anyone that's out in those wider channels need to want the ball, need to want to demand the ball, need to want to actually make meters out in the wings, and set it up again so that they can go wide again and force the defences. And like it's such a simple game, and you look, England do it. They just draw in defences in the middle, and then they suck them in, and then they push it wide. And that's what Ireland need to do. I think they'll get good return off the wider channels, because we do have good players. I don't think we've got a chance to see those wingers really in action, because we haven't had a lot of possession out in the wings. And we haven't done much with the ball, like Fiona said. Like, we've only scored one try in the Six Nations so far, one try and one penalty. That's been it. So, we have a lot of work to do in attack. We've a lot of work to do in defence. We missed an awful amount of tackles in the last game. And it's basic rugby. If you give them yards, if you give them tackles like that, they'll make, these teams in these championship games will make the most of those meters and those soft tackles.
And with that as well, yes, just coming in on that, Stu, with that kicking game as well, like, if especially I saw it in the first game against France, that Italy came out of the blocks, that line speed was huge. If Ireland, and you talked about Dana's boot, which has been so good, especially in the last game, she's gotten us out of trouble a lot. If we can kick down and keep it even infield, Italy like to counter-attack. They pride themselves on their counter-attack. So it would be great if we could get like a line speed up and put pressure on Italy. Italy have no issue in playing 5 meters out from their own line. They'll try and run you and beat you on the outside. So if we can understand and get that line speed up and get that kicking game going, I think that we can get up there and eventually turn over Italy, and that will put massive pressure on them.
Fiona, as a coach, actually, just coming back to you there, everyone's talked about scrum needs to get better, line out needs to get better, attack, defense, you name every aspect of the game. But if you only have, if they had a week off last week and then 5-6 days this week, if even a couple of training sessions, what do you focus on? Is it one thing in defense and just go with it? Or as a coach, what would you be saying to these girls?
Yeah, well, look, first thing off would be defence would be huge. I'd have them absolutely blasting each other out in the pitch. Obviously, you have to look after the bodies as well, but I thought at times the physicality wasn't up to scratch, and I think they need to get out and get into that. So I would have them working massively on defence. I think in this Italian game in particular, they're probably going to have more possession of the ball than they have had in the last couple of weeks. They would have expected more possession against Wales, trials, but it didn't happen. And the Welsh packs put massive pressure on at times, which turned over a lot of ball. So I think I'd focus massively on the first week when they came out of camp. I would have looked at maybe left them off a little bit in defence because they would have been hurting after that game. I think they would have focused on specifically Italy and how they're going to attack Italy, because they should have more ball. So a lot around that kicking game, a lot about getting that defensive lineup together. But then in leading up to this game, I would have had huge focus on that defensive area, Stuart, on those connections. They were broken too easily, hips to the sideline. People weren't square. They're very easily fixed. But the massive thing is, it's an analogy that a lot of people will use, but it's a chain. If one link in that chain is broken, you're in big trouble, especially in defensive line. So I would get them doing lots of drills where they're working together and upping that physicality.
Emer, what other positives you've seen from Ireland, like Nick Avard, Grace Moore? Who else has really said, you know what, I'm going to try and carry this team going forward?
Yeah, there's been some really good individual performances. I suppose we've mentioned Dana and how she came on, and she's just been such a cool head, level head, and her decision making has been really good, considering it was her first Six Nations start against France. It's not an easy place to start off. Dervnik and Vord has come in after a really good inter-pros. Like she really was standout player in the inter-pros at 8. I suppose we saw her versatility in the first game where she got landed out onto the wing. I think she was down as the reserve hooker, but played a back row as well, and that's not ideal. But Derv is a good rugby player. She's playing rugby a long time, has got really good smarts about that. And I think she's made the most amount of meters. I think she's top 10 for meters made. She's top 6 for amount of carries she's made in the Six Nations. You know, she's not afraid to just take the game by the scruff of the neck and just, I know she can't do it herself, but, you know, she wants to. She has the aggression. She's really, really strong. To look at her, you probably don't think, you know, she's very tall or very, you know, an 8 a technique, or looking at her position wise, but she's so strong. I think she has a background in like martial arts, and anyone that has done any bit of grappling or wrestling drills in her knows that you're never going to get out of there winning. She's so strong, and took a few years out of the rugby kind of world just to you know, she was in the sevens and then took a break from that and then came back in like a new player and has been doing really, really well. Grace Moore is over in the Premiership in England as well, and she has come into herself. She's been around the 15 squad for a while, and hasn't got a lot of game time, I suppose, with us. But that kind of, she was in the sevens program too, and it is a big difference. And I suppose she lacked a bit of game time in the 15s world, where she was playing a bit of 15s club. She was never really released and didn't get a lot of 15s time with Railway. And I think going over to Saracens has stood to her in just to work with the likes of Marley Packer and Poppy Cleal, and to be even, she's not getting a lot of game starts, but she's obviously on the bench there, and to work with those kind of type of players week in, week out, to scrummage against them, to learn even little nuggets off those English girls, you know, that's massive experience for Grace coming into this Six Nations. And we saw massive physical carries off her. And she's only going to get better with learning, you know, through the set piece, through lineouts and through scrums. But yeah, I suppose it's a really different team. It's a really inexperienced team. But what else is good, if we're not looking at just individual players, we're looking at, Fiona will talk about this, how good the scrum has been in the second game in particular, how they improved and how they really focused on that. And Ireland have a pretty good scrum record going into this game, and that has to be one area that they're going to look to dominate Italy in, is the scrum, because Italy don't have a very good record in the scrum. They've given away quite a lot of penalties. So that's an area that we can look to, you know, force a penalty, kick to corner. Nicola will probably take charge of the line out, and we can get all that sorted. And like that, we will have a lot more possession. It's just what we do with it and not panic when we do have it, because, you know, we haven't had a lot of it in the last 2 games. Sometimes you'll want to force stuff because you haven't had the ability to do it in the last 2 games.
Fiona, Emer just touched on Nicola Friday, the leader of the troops. We obviously saw the interview, the emotional one. She's given her heart and soul, to say the obvious. What did you think? What did you make of her getting emotional there? It just shows how much it means to her. And like this week, or what will the coaches have done or spoken to her about that? And just, I suppose it means everything to play for your country, never mind captain country. But like, did your heart go out to her there, and how much she is giving for this country?
Absolutely, my heart went out to her. I could see it. I think I was welling up in studio a little bit myself. It was awful. You could feel nobody wants a camera on them, especially when, like, if I was sitting at home watching EastEnders, I might have a few tears, and I wouldn't like a goggle box inside my sitting room watching me cry. But look, what people probably forget is, you know, that as a captain as well, there's so much pressure, and Emer would know her better, but I would imagine she takes that all to heart, and she feels like the performances are on her because she's the leader, she's the captain of the team. I know they're probably trying to build in camp, and especially Greg, I'd imagine he's trying to build more of a leadership group, but as the captain, as the person out there calling the shots, you always feel like one decision you could make can impact everything, which it can. But I think Nicola takes that to heart. So to see her like that, I could imagine it was a build up of the media presence now being on the team massively in the last couple of years, which it wouldn't have been so much there. Which is a good thing, but for a player to have to answer all these questions after a performance and a loss like that, and especially Wales, so I think it was a build up of that. But it shows her heart, it shows her want, and as a coach, Greg would be delighted with that. He knows that he's got her hook, line, and sinker in there. She wants to give everything she possibly can. They need to fix a couple of areas, especially for this Italy game. I'm not going to say they're going to go out and fix a few areas and beat England next week, but they have a chance of putting in a massive performance against Italy, and the heart isn't something that's lacking. It's about getting these connections together, getting things right. When they go out in the pitch, it's taken, as Emer spoke, there was times when they just didn't look, when line speed was coming at them, especially in the Wales game, they didn't know what to do. There was a lack. I could see people looking out around at each other, but it's now getting out with those tools. If there's a huge line speed, it's using that kick. It's getting a little bit deeper. And I think those players know how to do that. And the first two games will stand to them because they're going to get more confident in their ability to change things, especially when they're on the pitch.
Emer, do you just want to come in knowing Nicola very well just on that?
Yeah, I think the difficult thing is that you, as a player, you can't do any more. Like, I know Nicola is, you know, going to bed early, eating the right food, and everyone in the team, you know, they're training Monday to Friday. They're obviously before they've come in together, they're working full time and trying to train at the same time, and you're making the most of every hour in the day when you're not a professional player. And I remember something similar happened when we played France. It was actually 2 years ago. And we were after, you know, everyone, we believed we could beat France. I suppose no player believes you're never going to beat France. And we really believed we were going to beat France. And we lost, I think, our worst ever loss. And I remember chatting to our defence coach at the time going, I don't know what more I can do as a player, because I'm working full time and I'm trying to train every other hour of the day and trying to recover. And as players, as the 15, as the 23 that were there in the squad, we gave it our all. There was nothing more that I don't think I could have prepared myself anymore. And I think Nicola's looking at that result going, I don't know what more I could have done. I, as a player, gave it my all. The 23 girls that stood on this pitch gave it their all. And it's just, I suppose more needs to be done. That's the thing. And it's frustrating because it is, I think you said it last week, it was David versus Goliath. You know, it is when you're going up against professional teams that this is their sole job. They've had months together. Wales have had a year together. France, you know, we know how good they've been in the past. England are professional, like it's their full-time job. They have no other worries. And I think you people forget that on the outside, that Ireland may be pro in the word. They've only come together for the last 5 weeks or so. They haven't had a lot of preparation as a squad. And even the International Cup or the Celtic Cup, the English girls didn't play with us. The UK girls never played in that because obviously they were playing in Prem. So there's a lack of cohesion, but that's not their decision either. You know, the decisions are taken out of their hands of when they come into Irish camp and who they play and when they play and when they're allowed to be released from the Premiership. And I just feel like the frustration and not the frustration, but like, I don't think Nicola as a player, as a captain, could have given any more on that day. And I think that's where the frustration comes from. It's you're fighting a battle when you're playing against teams like England, whose job it is full time. Yeah,
fair point. Fiona, I know they've talked about, it's been well documented, the journey, you know, their own team, but like the next couple of weeks are massive because of this new W6V competition. The higher you finish up in the Six Nations, the better games you're going to play for the next couple of years.
Yeah, and look, I suppose that first game was a reality shock, I'd say, to the team, because they really thought that they were capable of probably making that top three. So the top three will go into that tier one of this World 15 competition, which would let you play against the likes of New Zealand. You're playing against Canada. You're playing against England, France, who would probably finish in top two. You know what I mean? So this was the obvious goal, and as a coaching group and as a team, that was an achievable goal in their eyes going into this. But I suppose when that first game happened, it was a complete shock. They now realize that Wales have jumped on much further than they thought they would have, and they're at the stage now where our fourth and fifth go into the tier two, and whoever gets that good old wooden spoon is going to go into tier three. It would be absolutely terrible for Ireland to end up in that tier three, because you would be playing teams that probably have only pulled together I suppose 15 games in the last couple of years. They wouldn't be advanced. Like if you're in tier two, you'd probably looking at maybe Japan, and you would get a couple of other good games. But in tier three, it wouldn't be great, because it's for 2 years. So they're not only going to play it in the summer for this summer, it'll be the following summer again. So this Six Nations actually brands you for the next couple of years. And I think that their main goal now would be to get into that tier two, because they need the higher level of games, because it's that standard when you play those games. We saw the likes of Wales, Italy. They look like they've played in the World Cup together, even though a lot of teams, those players might have retired and moved on after that, but they look like they had that competitive edge. And Emer spoke at the start about England are trying to change their style and fix a lot of things in how they play. Yeah, they'll go back to the mall, but they saw they can't just have one thing in the bank. So they've learned from the World Cup, whereas Ireland went over to Japan. They got a couple of games before Japan or whatever went to that World Cup, but it probably isn't the standard that we're seeing from those teams that have played in that World Cup just gone.
Emer, you were playing last year. Fionn talks about how important it is to play the good teams. Would you fully agree with her?
Oh yeah, you have to look at the best and compare yourself to the best, and quality games. Like, yeah, it's important to get games, in the off season and that, but even preparation games, like this year, Ireland didn't even have a warm-up game, and you could see that Wales had played not just in the World Cup. They obviously they had a lot of cohesion, but they had also played against South Africa in a warm-up game ahead of the Irish game, so they were already a step ahead. They'd already made right of the wrongs from that game ahead of the Ireland game, whereas Ireland went into the Welsh game and then they were like, oh God, there's so much wrong. There's this, and this. Whereas I think that could have been sorted maybe prior to it, had there been a quality game. Yes, going over to Japan was good, and there was a lot of new players blooded, in that first game, and they won, and I think everyone thought they were great and stuff. And then Japan put out their probably strongest team, and then Ireland were blitzed off the field. So it is important to not get get cocky with how good you think you are. Same with the combined provinces. I think they went over been like, we're really good. We're playing against this Scotland team and beating them, and this team and beating them. But it wasn't, I suppose, a true representation of that Scottish squad. You're not playing against girls who were doing dominant tackles, who were, you're making an easy gain line. You don't need three in a ruck. You don't need the latcher there. You can go off on your own and not stick to systems, because it's you're playing against weaker opposition. But when you're playing against the best, your systems have to be right. Your cleanouts and your rucks have to be right. Your line speed has to be perfect. Your connections in defence has to be perfect. So it's important that you play quality opposition, so that you then in Six Nations or in a World Cup or in a WXV, that you actually are, where you stand in that.
Fiona, going back to Saturday, Palmer, the scene where Ireland failed to qualify, that dreaded day against Scotland. Any scar tissue there? Sorry to bring that up, but I know there's a lot of young girls, but a couple have played there before. Will there be any talk of that this week, or do you think that's totally gone in the past?
I'd say it could be mentioned, but I know that was a different coach and staff as well that was there. So they've come in and they're trying to start, Greg is big on starting his own journey with this team. So I think it is good to look at old wounds and be able to, that's what I love as a coach, be able to point out those little things that are still slightly hurting. But I don't think to be too much emphasis on it, because they've come it's different. There's a lot of different players. You had Ciara Griffin was captain then. I know if she was there, she'd be absolutely hurting because she was so, you could visibly see it after the game, but she'll still talk about it now to this day. So it was absolutely huge for her. So I think Nicola will have those scars as well, and maybe in her captain's speech she might bring it out to the girls. So look, it's a place where you can use that little bit of hurt, use that little bit of heartache to get a performance out of these girls. But so many of the players have changed. I think a lot of the sevens were involved in that day in Parma as well, so they're not around either. So look, they'll go and have a look at that and try and dig deep. But I think they've got other things to be focusing on. I think if they can look at Italy, especially how Italy played in the last game, take that little bit of hurt, fix a couple of things, they'll definitely be going out in confident, quietly confident. Because as Emer said, people might laugh at you when you say, oh, this team should be confident. Every single time I put on a green jersey, I never in my life thought I was going to lose that game. And I suppose the pinnacle was against New Zealand in the World Cup, where, there might have been question marks, but that we won that game. And I think if you can have that invincibility about you, it doesn't always bring performances, but you shouldn't be putting on that jersey unless you think you could win every game. So they will be going over quietly confident, and they have areas to really focus on. And this Italian team have improved and have gotten better. But I think if Ireland can get that heart, get that fire pumping, get the set piece right, we will see a different performance from them.
So, Emer, if I pointed to you, you're a coach now against this World Cup qualifying team, Italy, or World Cup quarterfinalist Italy. How are they going to beat them, and how will Ireland go about doing it?
Look, I think Ireland will be a different team. I think, they've had 2 bad losses, and it was a similar situation last year where they had 2 bad losses as well, and then went down to Musgrave Park and put on a really good performance against Italy last year. They will pick themselves up after the last 2 weeks, and I think they'll have more confidence coming into this game. We've got a good record against Italy. Of the last 10 games, we've won 9 of the 10. They're not easy games. They've never been easy games. But Ireland in the past tend to be fitter than those Italian games, and the cracks will start to open. It'll be a tight game, probably 50, 60 minutes, and then the cracks will open. I think their fitness levels will go, and Ireland will start to make tracks with those gaps through the middle, or there'll be missed tackles and that. But I suppose if you look at, they have a lot of experience in the pack, but they've quite a few injuries at the moment. So I think we can really go at them in the scrum and in the set piece, force a few scrum penalties, like I said. That'll set up our backline, which is, inexperienced, going up against a pretty experienced centre partnership. So if we can look to, I suppose, do the stuff we weren't doing, it's simple. It's a midfield ruck, clear out, really, really fast clear out, and then get that ball out to the wing, out to those wingers, because they are lightning quick. Whichever ones are going to be starting, I don't know, will it be Aoife Doyle, will it be Natasha Behan, or will it be maybe even Lauren Delaney in there? But, Aoife Doyle got Player of the Year last year in the AIL. She's a fantastic player. We haven't seen a lot of her. Natasha Behan has been really impressive with Blackrock. Really, really strong carrier. Has been with the sevens as well. Really physical, really, really strong and fast. I think we just need to get those girls on the ball a lot more. And I think there is going to be opportunities to do that on the weekend, because Ireland will have looked at those areas and looked to see, we almost scored here. We almost did this here in the last few games, and give them a bit of hope that they have, and confidence that they have the ability to do it. But it won't be easy. And like I said, I think it'll be a really tight 50, 60 minutes, and then Ireland will start opening them up.
Fiona, what do you think Greg will make many changes from France, or which way do you see it? Do you think he'll stick with a steady 23 if he can?
I think he'll try and stick with a steady 23. There might be, I think Emer hit the nail, and he might change maybe one in the backfield. We might see Lauren Delaney come in. But I think Dana will hold her spot. Aoife Dalton, the 12, poor Vicky Irwin, France really targeted her. She played a lot at 13 for the last few games, and she was every time she got the ball, I think it was very hard to get the ball past her. So depending on injury, I'm not sure if he'll stick with her. He might use her. She's a great utility back to have as well, because she can play fullback or wing. So she's not a specialised 12 at the minute. So look, there might be a change in there, but I think generally pack and stuff, he's going to stick with what he has. And I think that's the right call. He's talking about a journey. we've seen far too many chopping, changing done before on the Irish team, not due to injury. And I think if you're blooding young players, you've got to give them a chance. You can't give them 1 game, 2 game, and if they make a few errors, take them off. We're at this stage now where we know we're not going to finish in the top 3. We've big games ahead, but we've got to stick with these players and get them confident. And I definitely think the pack is getting better as well. I thought Niamh Jones the last game was immense, and she's a player that can really stand up. They just need to sort out the throwing in the line out, because she's not throwing over in the Premiership either, so they might have worked a little bit with her, and that can be changed. You know, you can get in, you can do things a lot faster, line out out, you can go a little bit shorter, so they'll have worked on that area, and I think he'll stick with the same players, and they'll go out and definitely give it blast, and we'll see far more cohesion as well.
Well, girls, are a couple other games this weekend we must touch on as well. England v Wales and Scotland v France on Sunday. Emer, which way do you see those going? Is it as simple as England and France just to pick up easy victories, or do you see it going a wee bit different?
No, I think it is probably England. It's easy to say England and France, maybe different teams, you know, different players coming in, playing in that. I think England and France have the joy of being able to swap in and swap out, and it's kind of seamless transition almost. But Scotland are going to give them a good fight against France. We saw Scotland give England a really good fight, and did Scotland really put it up to France a few years ago? Was that Italy did that? But Scotland are coming better, and France aren't as okay. They were very good last weekend, but you know that probably was a really, really good performance out of France after a really poor performance in the first game. But I think the gap is closing between Scotland and the other teams. And I think, Wales will look and they will be really confident. I think it's a sellout up there. They'll have a massive home crowd against England, and they're really, really confident after a massive, really good first two games. A really tight win as well in the last game. So they'll be on such a buzz going into that England game, and I suppose they probably want to batter them. They play a lot of their rugby with and against the English girls in the Premiership. I don't think it'll be a nice friendly little game anyway. It never is against Wales or England.
Fiona, well, I just want to touch on Tuipulotu. She seems a real class act, and like she'll want to give England a bit of her own medicine, you know. But do you think Wales can cause them any type of problems?
I think they'll give a good first 20 minutes. I think they will have, I think their scrum will be a lot better. You know, England's blitzed the Welsh scrum for years, and I suppose Wales always prided himself on their scrum in particular. So I think we'll see a lot. She's really done massive things for the front row up there. I mean, I was looking at a team of the tournament early on, looking at players, and I had her in the second row because she's been playing with second row with Gloucester, with Sam Manning for most of the season. But obviously Wales have taken her in, and they've been training her as a tight head, and she's just come on huge scrum wise. We knew she could carry, but her scrum has been very good in the last couple of games. We'll see a big test against England, and we'll see exactly where she's at scrummaging wise for that game. Look, I think this Wales team would always be going in to games lacking confidence against England. Like, you know, they've taken some hammerings over the years, but this is definitely I think a game that they're going to be very confident going in. You know, you've seen they've had a very good win against Ireland. They beat Scotland, they pulled away right near the end. Their fitness is absolutely massive, so I think we'll see Wales in the game with England a lot longer than we would have in the past. But England's scoring ability from turnover, from set piece is just too good. Their back three are immense, so I do feel like they will win by a couple of tries, definitely.
Okay, interesting stuff. Well, before we go, always my favorite time in these podcasts, can we get some predictions, please? Ireland v Italy. Sorry to put it out there. Emer, first to you.
Do you want a scoreline, Stu, or just a win?
Whatever you want. You can go both.
No, we'll go. I'll go for an Ireland win. They'll pull away, like I said, in the last 10 minutes. We'll go for some hope for some tries. We'll go 3 tries to 2.
Jeez, sounds entertaining. And Fiona?
I'm going to say Ireland are going to nick it as well. I'm going to say around a 26-23 scoreline. I'd say they'll win it by a couple of points, 2 or 3 points. Do you want me to predict the other games, Stu? Or?
Yeah, if you're here now, you're getting paid, so why not?
You're dead right. I think France will definitely beat Scotland. I think you're looking at maybe by 50 plus points. I know Scotland have come on, but I think France are after kicking it up a gear after the first game. And they're obviously paid as well, so they're being told that at training every week. You better get out there. That first performance wasn't great. And I think England will pull away from Wales. I think you'll be looking at, but the Welsh will get a couple of tries. I think maybe about 60 points to 20. I would call the England game.
Well, girls, it's been absolutely great, and thanks for coming on. Don't forget to tune in Virgin Media 2, 4 o'clock on Saturday in Parma as Ireland take on Italy.